Welcome to Transformative Principal, where I help you stop putting out fires and start leading. I'm your host, Jethro Jones. You can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Welcome to Transformative Principal. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Jethro Jones, your host. Transformative Principal is a proud member of the B Podcast Network, and you can find a podcast for anything that you are interested there. And if you don't find a podcast that you're interested in, reach out to me and let's make one. That will be awesome. Today, I'm excited to have Rich Czyz on the program. He is the principal at Yardville Elementary School, and he's the author of 4 books. His latest, which is called Autopilot, Practical Productivity for School Leaders. And we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff in there. And he also runs the website 4 O'Clock Faculty, which you can find at 4o'clockfaculty.com. Rich, welcome to Transformative Principal.
Jethro, glad to be here and can't wait to chat.
Yeah, I'm excited also. So the book Autopilot Practical Productivity for School Leaders is something that I've been a big fan of for a long time. And I hope we can get into some nerdy stuff about it here in a little bit. But the way that you have kind of set this up is that you encourage principals to find a way to run the school before the school runs you. What does that mean?
I think we have a lot of administrators in schools and a lot of school leaders who are struggling right now. So there's a lot on their plate. There's more that's constantly added to their plate every day. And I think it's about finding a way to get into some of the strategies that are going to help you set up those systems to be more successful. So minimizing some of the things that maybe you shouldn't be doing, maximizing the time that you have for the important stuff, and really helping administrators to find a way to do more with less. And I think that's why we need to really focus on productivity for those school leaders.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different take to this. I think that principals should do less. You're talking about finding a way to do more with less. I think principals should just do less. And there's so many things that we are quote unquote supposed to do in schools. I think we need to take a step back and first figure out what is actually essential and what is just nice to have done. What are your thoughts on that, Rich?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that school leaders struggle with is elimination, right? So a lot of those things on our plate we kind of look at, and some of it's nostalgia, right? We've done this for a long time. We've always been doing this. Let's continue to do it. But I think when school leaders can get rid of some of those things, one of my biggest pieces of advice for school leaders is to do a time inventory, right? Like, how are you actually spending your time during the day? What is taking up most of your time? Figuring that out. And if it's things that you can either delegate or automate, really taking those things off of your plate is really the key to making your life a lot more easier as the school leader.
Yeah, I think that time inventory is so important. And I've had a little email course for years called Ideal Week, where people can go to jethro.site/ideal week, sign up for an email list, and it will walk you through every day for 5 days how to do that time inventory, what you can eliminate, how you can manage your time better, that kind of thing. What's your advice for doing a time inventory or a time audit of how you're spending your time? What does that look like to you?
So I think it's really, you could start with your calendar, right? Because I think your calendar shows a lot in terms of how you spend your time. Now some school leaders don't block everything out on their calendar. I think that's probably the first place to start is, putting everything onto your calendar. So if there are times when you're fighting fires within the building, making sure that those things are documented so today I put out 12 fires and didn't really get to anything else. So I think for a leader, it could be as simple as, pen and paper on the desk, jotting down what's going on throughout the day. But I think it does start with the calendar and making sure that you're recording everything that you're actually doing so that you can look back on that and see if it's worthwhile.
Yeah. I think that thing of documenting things that don't typically go on your calendar is really important because every day as a principal, you run into these things that aren't on your calendar, but it seems like they take up all of your time. And that is a really difficult thing to recognize. I have this little tool which is called it used to be called Timular, which is it's a 8-sided dice thing basically that fits in the palm of my hand, and I use that to swap between different modes of work each day, and it keeps track of what I'm doing. There's also an app that I can just start that thing and say this is what I'm working on. And this kind of intentional design about your day and like really paying attention to what you're doing is valuable. The real problem with that is when you're not at your desk, then it's hard to flip that thing to the right side that says this is what I'm working on. And so taking the time to really do that is super important and can be really valuable. So there are one of the things you said a couple minutes ago was figuring out what you can automate. And what does that automation look like to you today? Because automation looked very different just 5 years ago. So what does that look like to you right now?
Yeah, I always talk about how automation, a lot of people think about automation in terms of technology and what that looks like. Within my school, I'm a pre-K to 5 building, so we have elementary students in our building. But I think a lot of automation can actually happen by delegation, right? Is automating through other people doing things. So one of the examples from our school is we have um, our morning announcers, so our fifth grade morning announcers. So I've been in other buildings where the school principal does the announcements, or maybe it's the school counselor or someone like that. I basically train our fifth grade students at the beginning of the school year for about 2 weeks. It takes me to get through everything with them. We have a full template for how the announcements go every morning. I train each of them in each of the different roles of the morning announce team. And after that 2 weeks, it's automated, right? They can do it any day. Any of them can do any of the roles. And, I hand them a schedule and say, here's when you're announcing. And it's great because it takes that off of my plate. It's an automated piece. It gives those students that leadership piece as well, helps them to kind of develop own their own leadership and empowers them to do so. So I don't think the automation always has to be a technology piece. It could be having others help you with some of that stuff. Um, and I think what we're kind of talking about here is how it looked a lot different, 5 years ago than it does today. I think it's that power of AI and what that can actually do for us to help us take some of those tasks off of our plate.
Yeah, so we'll talk about AI more in a second because you got a whole chapter on this automation thing, and really a lot of it is about empowering and delegating others. So definitely want people to check that out more in depth. But I want to pick your brain a little bit more about this because there's a lot of value in having the students do the announcements. In my schools, we created a daily news crew that did a live stream video that they sent to the teachers. And in the first school I was at, we actually plugged it into our in-house video system because every classroom had a TV in it and we could broadcast into every room. And that was really cool because the benefit that that gave from me, one, not doing the announcements, I would show up, but the kids got everything ready and got everything set up and did the most of it, and then I would show up for the announcements. What was so cool about that is that the kids had this feeling of contributing to the school community in such a powerful way that they felt like it mattered that they were there and involved. And for me, that was a huge boon for all of those kids to see what they could do to contribute to the school. Can you talk a little bit about that empowerment piece and how it makes people feel like they are such valuable members of the community?
Yeah, it's really that ownership piece. Um, there was a time when I was leaving the building one day. I had a meeting off campus, and as I was leaving, I had to walk through the playground where kids were outside playing, and I had a student stop me and say, who's going to be in charge while you're gone? And my answer was everyone, right? And I think that's the ownership that you're looking for for your school, right? You want those students to feel like they're needed at the school, right? To take some piece of ownership. We actually do our fifth grade leadership roles. So morning announcer is just one of those, but we have several other roles within the building. We have peer leaders, we have safety patrol members. We actually ask our students at the end of fourth grade to think about maybe a couple of the jobs that they want for the following year, the leadership roles, and they have to write a resume. So they get some of those skills where they're thinking about what it is that they do well, what skills they may have, and how they might lend those skills to the school. And I think the more that we can empower students to do those are the things that they're actually interested in. And several years ago, I was talking to one of our third grade students, and it was a student who struggled with getting things done in the classroom, like wouldn't do his work, wouldn't do his homework. Um, and this was a kid who was at home, with his own YouTube channel. And so every day he was making videos that are going up on his YouTube channel. And it was trying to harness that energy into helping him learn. And I think when we can do those things, give those students projects or different skills that help them to take their interest and bring them into school, I think that's more powerful than any worksheet or anything like that in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the big amazing things as we transition to talking a little bit about AI is what AI can do to personalize things for each and every student in front of us. And we're recording this in November, and just today OpenAI released that they are going to have ChatGPT for teachers, which will be free for all K-12 teachers for the next 18 months or so. And being able to take a story, a problem, something, and then instantly individualize it for everybody in your class is a really powerful thing. And I'm curious to see where this goes. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like just yet because they're starting with us with about 150,000 teachers. Um, I'm sorry, before they release it to everybody, they're starting with this smaller group of 3 districts, if I read the press release correctly, and so it's interesting to see what kinds of things these things can enable. What other ways do you see AI really impacting the day-to-day work of a principal?
I do think it makes it a lot easier to handle some of the minute details, right? The minutia, the administrivia, where you're responding to an email. I think it's just a time saver across the board. You're using it in many ways, scheduling, managing all of those small details within the school day. That used to take up a lot of time can be done instantly almost now. So I think as a time saver and just from an efficiency standpoint, I think it absolutely helps school leaders every day.
Yeah, and these little things that are things that often need to be done, but we don't. They take time. These little things are really powerful where AI can step in and do that. You used to create an Excel spreadsheet and do a mail merge and that kind of a thing, and now that can be done even easier and more individualized with just a couple things. And you say, "Hey, I need to do this and recreate this for 10 different groups," and it will rewrite the same message for a bunch of different people. And that kind of thing is really powerful, and it really forces us to ask, going back to what we talked about before, um, do we really need to do those things? Are those things essential? Maybe instead of sending an email, we need to pick up the phone and call somebody, and we have to really interrogate those things. What are some of your pieces of advice for how to make smart decisions with
Oh,
using
I
AI?
think I think the big piece is we always talk about uh, the person along with the AI, right? Where you're using it as a thought partner, versus kind of just spitting out information and instantly sharing that. Um, I think the term that has been most popularized with that is the human in the loop, right? You want the human there to make sure that everything's going okay. I'm actually on our district's AI committee, and we've been talking about um, how teachers should be using it, how students should be using it, and we have kind of repurposed that phrase to the human in the lead. And I think that's really the big difference is not only are you in the loop, but you're leading that process, right? You're deciding number one on what your prompt looks like, and I think that's a key part of it is how are you prompting AI? What are you asking it? What information are you putting in there to hopefully spit out exactly what it is that you're looking for? But then also taking that information and making sure that when it is shared out, there's no bias involved, that you are really taking control of that process and not just using it as an instant time saver to eliminate yourself within that role.
Yeah, and there's a great quote from Ethan Mollick, who is at UPenn, who's doing a lot of good stuff on AI stuff, and he recently said that human in the loop is evolving from human who fixes AI mistakes to human who directs AI work, and that's a big change from where it was just a couple of years ago. But that really needs to be the idea that the human needs to be in charge and leading, and I think that's really important. One other thing that I want to talk about from your book is you talk about energy and you having the energy as a principal. Can you tell me a little bit about how you see that and what that looks like for the school leader and their energy
Yeah, as I
level?
said earlier, I think we have a lot of administrators who are and school leaders who are getting burnout, right? And they're struggling to keep up with everything that keeps coming at us, and they struggle to maintain the energy to kind of fight those fires on a daily basis. So I think from the energy perspective, I think you sometimes have to close up shop, and um, the other day I wrote a blog post about the open door policy and how it's killing productivity, right? And I think, I've been in
Yes.
a number
Yeah.
of interviews over the years for administrative positions. And I think nearly every candidate that we've ever asked that question of what's your leadership management style? And almost everyone spits out that answer of, well, I have an open door policy, right? People can come see me at any time. And I think when you have that open door, um, it invites everyone to dump their problems on you. And I think that's what happens to a lot of school leaders across the board is those problems are dumped on them. And I kind of use the phrase, you're the problem solving vending machine at that point, right? Somebody's throwing in some change, they're giving you a problem, and hopefully you're spitting out a solution. And I think when that happens, I think it can burn you out. So uh, I think it's important sometimes to close the door when you're working on something meaningful, letting others know that you are, putting that do not disturb sign on the door, and letting them know that you're doing some meaningful, important work in there. Because even if you have that open door policy and you do close your door, you're still going to get people knocking, or you're still going to get people trying to come in. So I think from an energy perspective, I think sometimes we do have to close the door. We do have to make ourselves less available. I don't want to say unavailable, but less available for some of the minutia and making sure that we're taking on everybody else's problems.
Yeah, teachers have essential work that they do that they cannot be disturbed from and get frustrated when they are disturbed from it, which is direct instruction teaching students. And it is perfectly acceptable for principals to have that work that they do without getting interrupted. And the problem that most people deal with is that they take those issues those things they need to work on and they do them at home at night instead of making it part of the school day. And I coach principals and I have for many years, nearly a decade now. And one of the things that I started doing was saying we're going to do these coaching sessions outside of the school day. And over the last couple of years I've said no, we are going to do it during the school day, and if you can't do it during the school day, you have bigger problems. If you can't close your door for a 45-minute coaching session to improve yourself and not let that be an issue, then that's a big problem for you. And we have to be able to do that so that you can start saying, I'm not available right now, and that's okay. The world's not going to come to an end because you're not available. And a lot of people think if they do anything different, then it is going to come to an end, and
I think
that's
it's
just
also
not
about
the
training,
case.
our colleagues and our staff on, we use this language with our elementary students, but to rate a problem on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Is this a 10 problem? Is this the one problem? Is it a three problem? Like, where is it on the spectrum of how big of a problem is this actually? And I think for, um, for our colleagues that are in the buildings, I think it's about training them to figure out like, okay, you're at my door right now, making this into a big problem, a 10 problem, but it's really only a one or two, right? And I think for me, it's about staying pretty calm and even keeled, right? Not too high, not too low ever. And I think that does help to kind of calm others in those situations as well. But it is really helping others to kind of see what's an actual problem.
Yeah, for sure. And a understanding how big of a problem something is another skill that needs to be developed. And we don't have time to go into that today, but I will ask you my final question, Rich, which is this: what is one thing that a principal can do this week to be a transformative
So I think
principal
the
like
biggest
you?
thing is finding that way to run the school before it runs you. So I would say elimination, right? That's the number one thing. So I think if the school leaders out there can do a time audit, take a look at their schedule tomorrow. What does it look like? What's on their schedule? What are they doing that they can delegate to others? What are they doing that they can automate? And what are they doing that doesn't need to be done, right? And I think if you can eliminate one thing from your plate this week, I think that certainly makes you a much better leader going into the next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Find something to eliminate. That's huge. Take something off your plate. That makes a big difference. Once again, Rich, thank you for being here. His book is Autopilot Practical Productivity for School Leaders. Go check that out. You can get it wherever books are sold, Amazon for sure. There's a link in the show notes at transformativeprincipal.org to that book. Rich, thank you so much for being part of Transformative Principal today.
Yeah, Jethro, thank you. Absolutely. It's been fun and I appreciate it.